My name is Marina de Brand de la Cloyan. I was the princess of the Cloyan kingdom, but everything changed when the Fire Nation East Empire attacked. I was survived by hiding as a maid, and now I serve as a maid in the Imperial Palace. I was always considered useless. Ever since I was young, I was never good at anything, and certainly never better at anything than anyone else. I'd like to be very good at my maid duties. I'd also like to be good at the arts, music, crafting, and cooking too. I'd like to be able to shoot, dance, and play card games well. Oh, and I'd like to be able to help people get better like doctors do, and also have the ability to catch bad people. I'm asking for too much, aren't I? Well, it doesn't hurt to make wishes. I would like to live a meaningful life.
When you combine wish fulfillment with great characterization, world building, and tightly written plot progression, then you've got yourself a recipe for success, don't you? I'd like to introduce you all to a title called 능력 있는 신녀님, which more or less translates to a talented lady, but has been retitled in English to a capable maid or a talented maid. This title is essentially a ridiculously relatable wish fulfillment power fantasy. Now I'm going to assume that we all wish we had more skills in life, be it martial, intellectual, magical, domestic, artistic, etc. But the typical power fantasy really does focus on either martial or intellectual dominance, usually both, just because we all want to live that awesome life. Heck, you even see this type of wish fulfillment permeate the shoujo josei genre. It really isn't the exclusive domain of male-oriented manga and webtoons, but they're just more well-known titles in that domain. It is uncommon, however, to find power fantasies that focus on artistic and domestic skills, unless the entire story is about cooking, baking, playing an instrument, etc. And usually, the character and plot development isn't really anything special. I mean, it is kinda hard to relate to an artist or savant who lives and breathes their craft, unless of course you are an artist who lives and breathes your craft. So imagine my surprise to find a manhwa that focuses on these less popular skills in a narrative that combines great characterization and political intrigue. This manhwa webtoon is special because it somehow manages to create a very compelling romantic drama whilst telling one of the wackiest narratives out there. This is a story that cameos Mozart.
It doesn't really work, does it?
Napoleon Bonaparte.
I am Emperor.
And Sherlock Holmes.
Chambermaids were once such a liberal breed.
My wife's a chambermaid.
Ladies and gents, if you're out there, a talented maid just doesn't get enough attention, and I want to fix that if I can. To begin this story, we need to take a look at the setting. This world exists in an alternate universe to our own. I say that specifically because the plot will use our very own universe as a reference point on multiple occasions. Somehow, people in this reality are still using armor and swords, but medical technology has advanced enough to create medication in tablet form. A lot of things will be intermingled between different eras, so I wouldn't be overly concerned with pinpointing any historical period as a specific reference. This is still very much a fantasy world with little to no emphasis on a magic system, which means this will be a story about people, not progressively absurd powers, something that already ensures that I'll be able to look upon the webtoon more favorably. Our story will take place primarily in the Eastern Empire. There's also Western Empire, so I can only assume that the author took a look at an old map outlining the Western and Eastern Roman Empire and based it off that. In between these two is the former kingdom of Cloyan. It's gone, annexed by the Eastern Empire before the story has even started. Unfortunately, the territory of the former Cloyan kingdom is suffering from civil unrest as not enough time has passed for it to be fully assimilated into the empire. Furthermore, the Western Empire, led by Johann III, has its eyes on the area, making assimilation a bit harder as the former kingdom of Cloyan shares a border with both empires. The ideal scenario for either empire would be to join the Cloyan bloodline with their own to either symbolically pacify the conquered populace or incite a revolt. Unfortunately, Crown Prince Rael of the Eastern Empire pulled a Genghis Khan and butchered the Cloyan royal family, which, to be fair, was probably a more sensible choice than it sounds.
All right, who's not dead? Sound off.
You really only need one member of that bloodline, and the target is Princess Marina de Brand le Cloyan. One of the more neglected princesses and definitely the best option, as she is supposedly well-liked, unmarried, and easier to control. It's just too bad she went missing during the chaos of the invasion. Oops! Meet Marie, your below-average run-of-the-mill bumbling maid. I think it comes to no one's surprise that our protagonist is the missing Princess Marina that everyone's been looking for. She disguised herself as a maid during the invasion and is now living day to day hoping to avoid the eyes of Prince Rael, as she assumes he's still out to eliminate everyone of the Cloyon bloodline. However, living day to day is rather tough when you suck at your job and can't really pursue another profession. Unskilled in domestic affairs, she is not a good maid and is practically an involuntarily indentured servant, fancy speak for war slave. Needless to say, her options are very limited, or so I assume, as the nature of her servitude is a bit unclear at times. Regardless, Marie continues to unimpressively stumble through daily life as a lower maid in the Imperial Palace until she's one day assigned to attend a terminally ill prisoner.
Today you will attend to an ill prisoner.
An ill prisoner?
Yes. We provide maid services for terminally ill prisoners.
Doesn't that seem kind of dangerous? What if I get sick and others become sick because of me? And who even sends maids to prisoners anyway?
I don't make the rules. Besides, even if we lose you will still be at nearly full capacity.
After attending to the prisoner, he's grateful and asks her what she would wish for. Normally, this is the part where any male protagonist in those dime a dozen isekai narratives say something really stupid, like unlimited powers, or wanting to live a quiet life, or some thoughtless wish any person devoid of hope or creativity might copy off of another author. However, Marie, assuming the whole thing is hypothetical banter, wishes for what any incompetent, hopeless zombie would wish for: competence, general skills, and the opportunity to live a meaningful life. Sure, it's not creative, but considering how the scene itself plays out and the sudden nature of how the question was posed, I'd say it's a serviceable answer that allows for a more versatile narrative development. More importantly, it feels in character for what little we know about Marie, and it's something that the everyday human can relate to. Not all of us wish for, nor can we handle the responsibility of unlimited power. Furthermore, Marie hasn't lived enough of her life to want to live a quiet one, so I honestly can't understand how any teenager or young adult would want to live a quiet life anyway, although I might understand in her case. Regardless, the old man prisoner prays for Marie's wish to come true, and so begins our tale of how Marie solves the problem of the week with her amazing new skills. That very same night, Marie receives a vision in her dreams of a maid serving tea to her master. After waking up, it turns out that Marie's wish came true, and now she's good at her job. She's good at cleaning, she's good at serving tea to nobles after her lucid dream, and has become someone her peers can rely on. Things are looking up. The head maid has even reassigned Marie to serve in the Empire's anniversary banquet, which just so happens to coincide with the death anniversary of the late Third Empress Crown Prince Rael's mother. Her job is to support the landscapers, which is rather convenient as Marie recalls her next lucid dream about a sculptor named Fiona. And not long after, the landscapers are facing a crisis where the sculpture of the late Third Empress is deemed to be unfit for presentation. Wishing to help, Marie channels the power of Fiona and begins working on the sculpture in the rain.
We are screwed. This sculpture of the Third Empress is no good. We cannot find anyone else to make another sculpture. We are screwed.
Do not worry.
I've got these gold fingers!
I will channel Fiona.
We are saved.
And this is where we cut to Crown Prince Rael. His reputation precedes him such that his subjects misinterpret his pragmatism for ruthlessness. He's not too happy about the treatment of the workers preparing for the banquet and decides to go out for a walk in the rain.
I will go out for a walk now.
Your Highness, it is dark and raining.
Don't worry, this is perfect weather for a crown prince to be walking around unescorted.
As you wish. Please wear a disguise.
Okay. Time to disguise.
It is perfect, Your Highness.
I just want to point out right now that his default appearance as Crown Prince is to wear a mask, and his disguised appearance is to take it off. The logic behind this is honestly whack, but somehow this is masterfully downplayed in the midst of everything else that's going on. On his nightly walk in the rain, he encounters a hooded figure working on the sculpture of his mother. But just as Rael tells the sculpture to stop and rest, he notices the sculpture's resemblance to his mother and decides to let them finish without interrupting. This encounter is crazy good. There are just so many positives I can point out in all the events that led to this scene, but I'll be talking about that later. After meeting the head sculptor and discovering that he was not responsible for creating the masterpiece in the garden, Rael ponders on who the artisan really is and suspects it might have been a woman. Intrigued at the possibility and mystery, he launches an investigation while Marie goes about her daily life as usual. One day, she randomly decides to channel the legendary troll himself, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and plays the ending to a piece of music that the head musician has been struggling to finish. Why am I calling Mozart a troll? Why don't you find the original unadapted lyrics to the song
Leg mir den Arsch fein recht schön sauber.
and then come back and tell me he wasn't a troll. In any case, Rael's out for his usual disguised evening stroll when he hears this beauteous piece of music and quickly rushes to investigate who the mysterious musician is. only to run into Marie, who somehow plays it off. Another fantastic meeting, I might add. The band finds the completed music piece the next morning, and everyone wonders who the mysterious magician might be. Rael somehow suspects that the sculptor and musician might be one and the same artist. Marie's new assignment has her taking care of the Swan Gardens, where she meets Marcus Kielhan de Satan, head of the Imperial Knight Order. But due to the nature of their meeting, she mistakes him for a squire. She also meets the disguised Rael again and continues to run into both for the remainder of her days in the Swan Garden. Rael normally visits the Swan Gardens to remember his sister, the 7th princess, who ended up as a casualty of court politics. It turns out that Rael and Kielhan were once friends but drifted apart after Rael's sister's untimely demise. Kielhan will not pledge loyalty to Rael as the Emperor is still alive and has not officially named Rael as the Crown Prince. The only problem with this predicament is that the current Emperor of the East Empire, Thorin, is currently in a coma and can't come to the phone right now, which leaves the matter of political succession in a dicey spot. Prince Rael begins to suspect Marie, as she is the common denominator to all of these mysterious events occurring on the palace grounds. However, before he can dwell on it, he gets word that the Western Empire has sent a delegation party that brings the very Emperor of the West Empire himself, Yohannes III. Yohannes' aim is to find and claim Princess Marina so that he can press his influence into the former Cloyon territory. It's at this point where the story becomes a political drama. And surprisingly, it works really well. We continue our story as Marie saves the banquet by channeling a modern chef to create Salisbury steaks, which turns out to be a great success. This event leads to Marie's promotion and reassignment to Crown Prince Rael's attendant, a rather precarious position for someone trying to lay low. Whether Rael knows it or not, his intrigue has now become something more, as it's pretty clear he's enamored with her. Rael even spends his free time strolling around in disguise, hoping to run into her. As Marie carries out her new duties at the evening party, she runs into Yohannes, who shortly after suffers a heart attack. She makes good use of her latest vision as a combat medic and proceeds to administer modern CPR to revive him, and thus avert what could very likely have been an international crisis. The only problem with this is that Marie is now Yohannes' #1 target of interest, as he's somehow aware that the missing Princess Marina disguised herself as a maid. It's honestly not going to take him long to figure this out, and this event effectively sets off a hidden timer in the story. Now that I finally managed to introduce the key characters in this story, I'm going to fast forward the next few events. Marie meets the neglected 10th prince and sees the parallel with their own life as a neglected princess. Thus, she decides to channel a trick magician and use her to entertain him. By doing so, Rael notices it and falls deeper into the hole until Kielhan shows up and makes him jelly. The whole event is used to have Marie discover Kielhan's true identity, but also break down the barriers between them, while also awakening Rael's more possessive side and getting him to realize that he's actually head over heels in love with her. Well, maybe not so much, but he is definitely interested. Once again, another fantastic sequence that builds the political atmosphere, interconnects different plot points, and lays the foundation for future developments. So far, actually, we've just been getting really great scenes one after another. There is a problem at the Grand Ball, so once again, Marie activates and saves the day with her awesome musical skills.
I learned this at my piano lesson.
When one of the maids is blamed for arson, Marie channels Sherlock Holmes, I'm not kidding, and solves the mystery in the presence of both Rael and Yohannes.
Every puzzle has an answer.
She impressively reveals the nature of the incident while also avoiding another international crisis. And at some point, Yohannes just ready to outright kidnap her. He already suspects she was responsible for saving his life earlier. Rael finally discovers who the mysterious artist is after having Marie play the piano for him, but cannot decide whether to keep her or send her away, as her presence is now becoming disruptive as she consumes his thoughts. After little consideration, he decides to claim her as his personal maid. And so Marie moves ever further away from her goal of keeping her distance from the Crown Prince. But hey, it gets even better. She's been sent 3 invitations to the masquerade ball by 3 of the most powerful men in the local vicinity. Yohannes attempts to steal the first move, but is cut off by Kielhan, who acts as her partner for the evening. Yohannes decides to back off as he realizes just how weird it is to be preoccupied with pursuing a maid when his aim is to find the missing Princess Marina. It's more than just a little amusing to know how he was right on the money the entire time. Either way, he'll be back. Rael's here too, and the moment his eyes meet Marie, they open up like dinner plates. But after seeing who she's with, his imagination runs wild and he proceeds to quietly seethe and sulk for the remainder of the ball. On the day after the masquerade ball, Marie decides to go into town and enjoy the festivities until she's assaulted by the local hoodlums. Luckily, Prince Rael is strolling around again in disguise and thwarts the attempt. They spend the rest of the day together, and I think that's the really interesting bit. Instead of developing this pairing at the ball event, they connect in town masquerading as commoners, and I think that's actually a very notable aspect to their relationship. In a way, the author seems to be creating typical scenarios in the genre like a ball event, but most of the development between Rael and Marie focuses more on artistic, intellectual, and impromptu moments, which really goes a long way to break the mold this genre finds itself in. And it's rather appropriate too, as both characters are free to be themselves in these moments, which I can appreciate because the story is about actual plausible people and not caricatures. Both characters are unaware of each other's true identity, which makes the scene both fascinating and a bit ridiculous. Either way, life continues for Marie as she now attends Prince Rael as his personal maid and learns that he suffers from insomnia. However, using her magic erupting, burning, she prepares tea to his liking and somehow solves this problem, albeit temporarily. Perhaps the best parts of this sequence is that Marie's close proximity to Rael causes her to reevaluate his character, and she begins to think he's not the monster she thought he was. Rael, on the other hand, insists on torturing himself by digging himself deeper into that rabbit hole by keeping his object of desire within reaching distance, so to speak. However, he can't wait any longer for the missing Princess Marina and decides to hold a Crown Princess selection competition. The candidates for Crown Princess are Ariel Shulian and Rachel Istvan. Marie decides that supporting a candidate will allow her to gain favor to win her freedom, so she throws her support behind Rachel Istvan. The Dauphines compete against each other, and Marie helps Rachel win against Ariel each time, but Rael quickly realizes that all of Rachel's accomplishments are actually Marie's. This pretty much culminates into a pivotal moment when an Eastern nation's delegation party unexpectedly visits the East Empire. Obviously, there's another international crisis brewing, but Marie saves the day again with her 4D chess brain. Rael will no longer entertain the facade of either Dauphin and simply goes to the source for consultation. Marie's suggestion impresses Rael so much that he grants her her wish for freedom, by granting her an esteemed noble title and binding her to the imperial family. Absolute genius. That sequence from her consultation to the bestowment of her noble title is just beautiful. Not only does it serve to show how suitable Marie would be supporting the ruler of an empire, but it also shows just how savvy Rael is. The act of bestowing a noble title is almost an endorsement to entertain the idea of keeping her to himself while ensuring that she cannot leave. He still tries to convince himself that he needs to do what's most beneficial for the empire, but his actions are telling us that this sentiment is becoming a lot more flexible if what's best for the empire just so happens to be close by and conveniently within reaching distance. Marie eventually finds out that the mysterious stranger she's been bumping into on her days off is actually Crown Prince Rael, and it's at this point that Marie pretty much gives up on the idea of running away and instead resolves to become indispensable to him so that once he discovers her true identity, he'll keep her around instead of giving her the old stab. The season closes with several great setups as Johanna starts to realize that the maid might be Princess Marina, and Rachel Istvan holds some animosity for Marie's quick rise to power and influence. This webtoon manhwa is truly something special. The storytelling here is phenomenal, as each sequence appears to be carefully planned. I would even go so far as to say that this title is probably the best example of a political romance drama I've ever seen in this genre. This is a story about actual people doing sensible things. Each person follows their own agenda and no one breaks character. What's even more amazing is how Marie is presented with a problem and uses her new abilities to solve each one to provide wish fulfillment to the audience, but the author also uses every new event to reinforce each new romantic development, create character tension, and build the political atmosphere at the same time. All the short gratification sequences flow naturally and complement the overall plot while also building the world by expanding on each character's backstory. Furthermore, we can see how the relationship between Marie and Rael grows over the course of multiple short sequences. And no, I know Marie and Keelhan have a nice thing going, but the story really is pushing for a Rael and Marie ship. To that end, I want to revisit the rainy sculpture scene and all the opening events that led to it. That particular scene is what really sells you into continuing the story, and the fact that everything is set up to happen in the 4th chapter without feeling rushed is just kind of amazing. Marie makes a wish. Fine, any fool can do that. However, that event was well done because Marie made the wish with no real expectation of it actually coming true, because it wasn't done in front of a useless, incompetent, or evil goddess. I know this isn't an isekai story, but it's almost told like one due to how Marie's vision manifests itself. We see Marie actually putting her new skills to its intended use of helping out others, which characterizes her to be a good person. To be frank, I think Marie's about as exciting as Wonder Bread, but she is probably the most understandable and relatable character I've ever seen in this genre, and I do not say that lightly. There is beauty in simplicity, and I think Marie encapsulates that really well because she's genuinely likable, which is really important as she is portrayed to be an object of desire for leaders of nations. A lot of the manhwa's charm comes from how this story is told rather than how individual characters act in situations. Crown Prince Rael is developed in conjunction with Marie. His reputation to the populace and to the audience is established early and it's used as a tool to build his character. He's someone who struggles to balance the pragmatism needed to run an empire with his own personal desires. Their first meeting in the rain while Marie works on the sculpture is just so good because he doesn't find out who she is until later, and he doesn't even know that the person working on it is a woman. Rael is just enamored with the sculpture of his mother, which creates even more significance of the moment in his mind. These moments continue as Marie captures his heart with music and constantly averts international crises like it's Tuesday. Even when disguised as a commoner, he finds her personality to his liking, and it's really not hard for me to believe that he would find her desirable. Rael is given every reason to want her, but he understands that stabilizing the empire takes precedence over his own feelings. This struggle is extremely well developed as we see Marie prove herself to be a suitable candidate for politics as well as being an accomplished artisan. The only thing she's missing is a noble title, power, and influence. The truly ideal candidate for Crown Princess would be the missing Princess Marina de Braine-l'Cloyan, and therein lies the most amusing part of this story. Marie is the Princess Marina de Braine-l'Cloyan that Prince Rael is looking for. That plot point creates one of the most engaging narrative devices as every scene with these two are filled with tension and a flurry of mixed emotions. Rael slowly falls in love with Marie organically over the entirety of the first season, bit by bit, and we are spectators to that every step of the way. However, Rael knows that he can't just marry himself off to a lowly maid, so he constantly tells himself that he's only looking to enter a beneficial marriage for the Empire, regardless of his personal feelings. The statement characterizes him well, and we as the audience just sit there and appreciate the irony of the whole situation. Just to reiterate, his ideal partner is also his desired partner, but he doesn't know that because they couldn't possibly be the same person. Could they? It's not like he can figure that out himself because there's realistically nothing that adequately links the two. On the other end of this relationship is Marie, who finds herself gravitating ever closer to Rael whilst desperately trying to hide that she's Princess Marina. This dynamic should sound painful for the audience, but instead I find it very compelling because I understand the motivations on both sides and everything they've done so far makes sense. I can follow their logic here. As their relationship grows, both Rael and Marie rationalize and reevaluate their predicament with each new development. By the first season's end, Rael raises Marie up the ranks to keep her closer to him, while Marie works to one day be close enough to Rael to let him know her identity without fearing death by doing so. The story never wastes your time by going back and forth, and nor does it stagnate. Every little thing that happens serves to grow the budding relationship between the two while also building upon the everyday lives, culture of the common folk, and developing the internal and external politics of the world. Make no mistake, there's a bunch of silly things added into the story, but the way it's incorporated and the pacing makes it all work. This webtoon should be a mess. It really should. But it's not. It's not a heart-pumping and an exciting story by any means, but it is a story about people, not caricatures of people. And because of that, the intrigue and dramatic tension are on another level. What else do I need to tell you? Read this if you haven't already, understand that some of it is ridiculous, but appreciate how solidly everything comes together. As of the time I'm creating this video, the second season is about to be released soon, so now is a good time to pick up where you left off for anyone who's actually read through this a while back.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like the content, please consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. Who am I? I'm Chikun. Bugok! I'm the one who creates the thumbnails. Bugok! While you're hitting that like and subscribe, allow me to take a moment to introduce you to the Animal Crochet Store. Do you want to pick up a nice, easy hobby? Bugok! Consider crocheting so you can make all the fun stuffs. Bugok! Like this one, or this one, and this one. Make them for yourself, make them as gifts. Make all the stuffs. Bugok!
Okay, get out of here. Weebtooner, signing off.